Hook Outdoors, and this is our podcast for the week of March 31st, 2021, and we'd just like to welcome you to Get Outdoors with Hook Outdoors. We'll just get right into it here, folks. Cave Run Lake sits at 742.8 feet of elevation, which is 12.8 feet above the normal summer pool of 730 feet. The inflow as of 6 o'clock this morning was 4,475 CFS. The outflow was 2,249 CFS. That's spillway. But I would imagine that it's probably a lot less than that by now, just for the simple fact that the flow was pretty much non-existent earlier this morning, probably around 11 or 12 o'clock. Looked like they had shut it down pretty good because there was a tremendous amount of rain that moved through last night. So I looked for the lake to be on the rise and probably to not clear up anytime soon. Water temps sit in the mid-50s for most places. Seems like yesterday, from what I heard, and Evan can go into that a little bit deeper, but the more protected pockets had a little bit warmer water than the open areas like the flats and so forth. And the only thing I can figure is just where the wind was blowing, and it was stirring up that water out in the open areas, whereas in the pockets and things, the wind wasn't getting back in there and stirring things up. Crappie fishing and everything right now is moving pretty much shallow at this point. That seems to be where I'm hearing of everything. The crappie are in right up on the banks in the bushes. Not so much the catfish. Most of what I'm hearing there is down in the spillway, especially at the further end. Most people, from what I'm hearing, they're just using cut bait and that kind of thing. You know, that's about what's going on with that, at least right now. The musky fishing, there's been a pretty decent bite. They've been doing some of this short line, kind of shallow trolling, I guess you'd say. And then I've also heard of some jerkbait and spinnerbait action, but there's nothing out in deep water. Most of it's been right up on the bank, right up in the bushes, and that kind of thing. At least that's what I'm hearing at the moment anyway. I'm kind of curious where the lake is going to go here for the next few days. Like I said, we had a ton of water, and we've got a big, hard cold front coming in, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So Evan's going to come along and give us a report on the bass fishing. But first, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, Bill Lures, the makers of Rattle Trap. And as soon as that's done, Evan will jump in with our report on the bass fishing, and then we're just going to have some general discussion.
The only
about,
sound more enjoyable than the plop of your lure breaking on the surface of the water is the high-pitched squeal of your reel as you pull in your first bass of the day. To help ensure the first catch on your line is a fish, try the SB57 by Bill Lewis, the creators of Rattle Trap. The SB57 features a wide coffin-shaped bill that enables the bait to easily drive through brush, stumps, rocks, and more. Plus, its computer chip construction gives it that tight wiggle you and your next bass are looking for. The SB57 is Mark Daniels Jr.'s signature lure and is available at Hook Outdoors Tackle Shop, located on Cave Run Lake, or rattletrap.com.
Yeah, the water temperature, it's finally warming up. You know, yesterday I went out and I was finding water somewhere, you know, the lowest I seen was about 52, but, you know, towards later in the evening after the sun hit all the water, I found as high as 58. So, you know, the main thing right now fishing pre-spawn and getting into the spawn is really just hunting that warmest water you can find. You know, you can go into a creek and say like going into Caney Creek or something like that. At the mouth of it, you might find, you know, 50, 51 degree water, you know, colder water. But you can go somewhere else, you know, towards the back or in a separate, you know, arm of the creek and maybe find, you know, 57, 58 degree water. And, you know, that's where your bites are going to come most of the times, in that warmest water. Because the largemouth specifically, they're operating on, you know, they're just feeding, you know, actively and all that stuff. And then when they find that warmer water, they're more apt to feed, you know, regularly, as opposed to, you know, sitting out there in that colder water. So, you know, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be, you know, they're going to be hunting for that warmer water. and you're going to get more bites in that warmer water. So, and like Dan mentioned earlier with the protected pockets, that's where I found the warmest water was places where the wind wasn't blowing constant. Yesterday we had winds blowing pretty consistently all day. 15, 20 mile an hour at sometimes. So that water's getting all churned up and everything, and that sun really can't penetrate into that water as good as it can. To where if you can get back in a a protected pocket where it's just kind of slack, calm, I guess stagnant water, and the sun can just beam in there and warm that water up a whole lot quicker than it can if it's rolling foot or 2 foot waves. So your best baits right now with the lake being high, getting up in the bushes, you're going to be flipping around a creature bait, flipping around a heavy jig or something like that. Or if you don't really want to get back up in the bushes too much, you can roll cast a spinnerbait or a chatterbait or something like that around the edges. Square bills are always good this time of year. Flat side crankbaits like a DT10 or something like that. Those are going to be really good options. Okay. So that's kind of how Cave Run's sitting right now.
You did see a bunch of bait out yesterday on your electronics, though, didn't you?
There was a lot of bait, and even just going past my electronics, I just seen quite a bit of bait coming up, and they were active on the surface of the water, and that kind of told me where the bait's shallow, higher in the water column, that's where the bass should be as well. So that's another big trick or tip that I can give people too, is just opening your eyes and paying attention to what's going on with the bait and all that stuff. And if you have a sonar or anything like that on your boat, it doesn't have to be like a live scope unit or something like that. On your traditional sonars and your 2D sonars and all that stuff, you can still see bait, but just kind of pay attention to where that bait's sitting consistently around. If you're seeing most of the bait in 10 to 15 feet, that's when you can break out like a deeper diving crankbait like a DT10 or something like that, or a CD15 or something like that, and get down there to where that bait is. But if you're seeing bait skipping and jumping and all that stuff higher in the water column, that's when it's going to be more than likely it's going to be better to pick up a square bill or a spinnerbait or something like that, or even a shallower running jerkbait.
Okay. There's the big, what is that? That's the first of the year, the NTBA. Is that this weekend here?
Yep.
And anyone that's been keeping up with the weather here the last couple of days, we had 70-degree temps yesterday, and I think tonight it's supposed to be in the 30s, and then I think Friday morning it's supposed to be 25, and then I think it's supposed to be like 29 Saturday morning. So we've got a pretty hard front and all this rain coming in. Those boys are going to have their work cut out for them Saturday morning, aren't they?
That's for sure. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to how those weights are going to shake out. I'm not fishing it this time around. I'm more than likely just going to kind of get my feet wet in a few of them. Really, mainly just so I can qualify and fish the end of the year points championship down on Cumberland. That's all you got to do in that series is fish about. I think you have to fish 3 of them. And then you're automatically, you can fish the NTBA Skeeter Classic down on Cumberland in November. So I'll try to at least fish 3 of them just so I can have a shot at going down there and fishing for $10,000 on Cumberland.
But now this weekend, it's going to be tough as far as bass fishing. The musky fishing has been picking up. I don't know. I think by Sunday, once we start getting a little bit more heat back, I think it'll kind of start heading back the other direction. But now, next week, we're going to have 70-degree water for the most part, most of the week. And that's going to get these fish turned on and get them back on the bite. Evan, what do you think these fish will be doing after a couple of days of these good warm daytime tips and warm nights?
The main thing with the temperature that I'm looking at that they're giving next week is the high nighttime temperatures. There's a big difference in having 35 to 45 degree nights and then having 70 degrees in the day.
Yeah. Where
even though you gain 2 or 3, sometimes 4 degrees in some places during the day, if you have 35 degree weather at night. Right. You're going to lose that right back off. But the main thing I'm looking at next week is those nighttime temperatures being in the mid-50s to even some low 60s. Right. So that's going to get it to where the lake's not going to lose any temperature at night. And then, by 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, that air temperature is already warmer than the water. And they're giving sun as well.
Yeah.
So that sun's just going to be penetrating all day long, just warming that water, warming it. And then when it gets dark, it's not going to lose anything back off again.
It'll drive his fish shallow.
They'll definitely be. They'll more than likely have their backs out of the water sometime next week.
Well, even that one you caught yesterday, you said that it was in basically 6 inches of water in the Clay Lake parking lot.
Right, yeah, I caught one yesterday. I mean, it was, I don't know how it didn't even have its back out of the water. So, they're going to be there. If there's already a few up there right now, by next week I'm expecting to more than likely see water temperatures in the low 60s, maybe by the end of next week.
Will they be on the chasing these moving baits like spinnerbaits, crankbaits, and that kind of thing as this water? Will they get more active? Will they be more apt to chase something down?
They definitely will be. Spinnerbait's always a really good pattern down here in the spring. You can, tournaments are won every year down here on a spinnerbait. But that and flipping and all that stuff with the water is going to be rising so much as we just heard.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, folks. We just had a friend of ours stop in and said that he had heard that we were expected to have a 14-foot rise here over the next few days because of all the water we had on the south end of this watershed here. So we'll see. I mean, it's not impossible. I mean, if we did have a 14-foot rise, that would basically put us back to where we were when all this mess started toward the first of the month. So it's not. It's not uncommon for it to get that big here, and I guess the one bright spot maybe at least it'll be warm water. Do you think talking about spinnerbaits and stuff? I mean, with this color of this water, I mean you're talking chartreuses and maybe white and chartreuse and I guess probably would you throw a gold blade or nickel blade in this dirty water?
In this
or a painted blade,
right?
either.
In this dirty water, I'm more than likely going to pick up a painted blade. There's several companies out here that make really good spinnerbaits, and you can get blades in every single color. Like I've got several spinnerbaits that are chartreuse and white blades, red kicker Colorado blades, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What is these upcoming conditions? That red kicker blade on there. This is kind of the deal for that, isn't it? With this water.
It is. Yeah, that red kicker blade. It's just a smaller Colorado blade up above a willow blade on a spinnerbait. Yeah. That kind of deal just kind of surfaced about 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, that's a new thing. We just started. We had them last year, and I've kindly loaded up on a little bit more this year. But that's kind of a new thing, and I just think that what we've got here is really suited for it.
Yeah, the dirty water we have right now, that's really the main reason they made those spinnerbaits with the red kicker. I think is just have something different, something with a little bit more flair to it. Everybody's been throwing for 50 years normal chartreuse and white, chartreuse and black, things like that, white and chartreuse, all those colors. And just with the same blade combinations, you either throw silver or you throw nickel or you throw gold. Mm-hmm. And then they threw in that red blade in there. And, in the dirty water, just having spinnerbaits side by side, like at this last tournament at Cumberland, I had several different spinnerbaits tied on through the week that I was there. Mm-hmm. And the spinnerbaits that I threw that had that red kicker on it, I mean, you can see it so much better.
Right.
You wouldn't think that it would really make that bigger difference, but that red kicker, even though it's it's small, it's probably the size of a quarter or even smaller sometimes.
Right.
It puts off so much of a flare, and you can see it so good.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think about given the lake conditions? And I know here where it's up so big in the timber, it wouldn't be that. It's not. The conditions aren't conducive to it, but just the general water conditions here. What do you think about like this lipless crankbaits? Like rattle traps or what have you. I mean, is this kind of suited to them, or is it a little early yet, or?
No, the thing about a lipless crankbait is you can catch fish on a lipless crankbait all year long. You just have to be on specific, types, bodies of water. Like you can get down there on Gunnersville and things like that, and eelgrass and all that stuff on the TVA, and that's predominantly the biggest pattern down there in the winter times. Ripping a lipless crankbait through eelgrass. And, you can catch them, all through the spring and summer. And, a lipless crankbait is just a phenomenal pre-spawn bait.
Right.
And mainly it's for just covering water. Just specifically if you're on like a big flat or something like that, and you know that there's grass there or something like that, or maybe stumps or laydowns or something like that that is out there. It's just something that you can rip up and around and yo-yo and things like that, and it's just something that has a little bit different presentation than somebody dragging a Carolina rig or somebody throwing a big spinnerbait or something like that.
Right. I was just curious to get your idea of being a bass guy. I know that Cave Run kindly is, well, not kinda, it is noted for its lipless crankbait for the muskies in the springtime. That's what me and Greg Thomas discussed last week when he was on, and that's a big deal. Just like you talked about, ripping it through the grass, and that just on a larger scale. You're talking 1 ounce versus half-ounce crankbaits, but still, it's kind of the same kind of geography, if you will, same structure and location, and all that kind of thing. Where do you think the fishing is going to go here over the course of the next 2 or 3 weeks? We're expecting after this hard cold front clears out, like we talked earlier, it's supposed to warm up and just be 70s of a day and 50s of a night. Long term, when do you think that'll push those fish into the spawn?
Sometime during the next week, those fish they should absolutely just bust loose on the cave. That's kind of just a bold prediction. That's kind of what I think.
Yeah.
The water temperatures by late next week with the weather they're given, they should start flirting with 60, if not get into the low 60s.
Right.
So, any time you get water temperature consistently around 58, 59, and 60, that's when those fish will really push shallow and they'll move up and they'll start doing their thing. That's when you can consistently, count on a shallow bite.
Right.
But sometime late next week is when we should really see it bust open.
Right. And
then, in like you said, in the next 2 to 3 weeks is really when the spawn will really take effect. And we'll start seeing water temperatures in the next, 2 or 3 weeks consistently staying in the mid-60s. And maybe even the next 3 weeks we might see a 70-degree temperature. Because, the weather they're giving right now, they're giving almost 80 next week. So if we can, stay on that same path, which it's April in Kentucky, so we could have snow next weekend. You seen what happened this weekend? I'm plumb sunburnt and got coon eyes and a flip flop tan line from fishing yesterday. And now they're giving snow for tomorrow.
Yeah, it'd be a low of like 24 Friday morning, all that kind of thing. And you fish these BFLs and you fish some of these other tournaments and things. Is like Dale Hollow, are they like maybe a couple of weeks ahead of us as far as like the spawn and things, or are they running about the same temp that we are? And or do those? It's not that far south, but do they run just a little bit ahead of us?
Dale Hollow and Cumberland and lakes like that, they do run a little bit ahead of us, and they are a little bit more south than we are, but it's really. That there is a difference, but there's not that big a difference, if you know what I mean. Like really the main thing that separates like a Dale Hollow and a Cave Run is how big and how deep it is. Because in the wintertime, the water temperature doesn't get down near as cold as it would.
Right.
On Cave Run. Like on Cave Run, it was almost completely frozen.
Yeah, and this thing will freeze over.
Right. And, Dale Hollow and specifically Cumberland never freezes over. That just doesn't happen. Because you can be on a main lake bluff and be in 790 feet of water, what it feels like.
Sure, yeah.
But Dale Hollow is some of the same. Dale Hollow is shallower than Cumberland. It has a lot more flats and shallow grass and things like that, and big humps that come up, and the creeks are shallower than Cumberland. But it's still predominantly it's bigger, and it's still consistently deeper than Cave Run. So the water temperature doesn't drop off as much as it does in the wintertime, meaning that they have a faster pickup in the spring when it does start warming up.
Right.
So like when I was down there the first weekend in March fishing a BFL, I was already finding water in the low 50s and mid 50s, whereas on Cave Run the water was still in the low 40s.
Right.
So those fish they're just farther along, and it doesn't really have much to do with the longitude difference, north to south and all that stuff. because there's really not that big a difference to make a huge difference. But it's just the size of the lake and how it's built.
Okay. And, back to what I was talking about earlier, what we're thinking here over the next 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. Once they get through the spawn, say, here in the next few weeks, and, the lake hopefully clears out and starts on the way down, what are some things that people can keep in mind here post-spawn wise? What's going to be some of the first stuff you'll throw once these fish come out of the spawn?
Top water and more top water.
Yeah.
That's really the first thing I think of when I think of post-spawn fishing is, throwing a buzzbait, throwing a spook, pop bars, things like that. Covering water, because, those fish are still, when they come off of the beds, they're all beat up and they're spawned out and they're moving out to their summer haunts, and they're looking to feed. They're looking. They get active. That water's warm. And really something we talked about and touched on pretty big a couple weeks ago on a podcast was shad spawn. Because when those fish start getting into the post spawn, when they start making their transition back out to the summer haunts from their spawning areas, that's when the shad are spawning at the same time. So that's when a spook and a popper and a buzz bait and things like that really come into play. So I'm thinking first thing when I think of post spawn fishing, I'm thinking of a topwater.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good. Well, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up today. There's a lot going on here weather-wise. Hot and cold, rain and no rain. We had a pretty good chunk of rain here last night, so we're just going to see what happens over the course of the next few days. The lake's still not the best clarity in the world. What would you say the main lake is?
Pretty much the water color really didn't change for me all that much until I got way back in a creek. When you get way back in a creek, it cleared up just a little bit, but on the main lake it was still
just no clarity at all. Yeah. Okay. Well, folks, at least we do have a stretch of warm weather coming up here. So, like they say, a day fishing is better than a day working. So, we'll have a lot of opportunities for that, at least next week anyway, with the heat coming in. And, as we like to say here, folks, just get outdoors with Hook Outdoors.